Festivals are a great way to celebrate music, culture, friendship, and sneaking drugs past sniffer dogs. But what if we added mud into the equation? These are the many scandals of music festivals. The original 1969 Woodstock was a defining moment in baby boomer culture, a generation-defining message of peace and love that over time was reinterpreted as, let's steal as much wealth as we can. That being said, stinky millennials like me and our Gen X brothers aren't much better. These Woodstocks reflected the zeitgeist of the time, contrasting to the peace and love movement of the 1969 Woodstock. The 1990s was characterized by directionless anger and rampant consumerism that culminated in an explosion of emotion at the end of Woodstock 99. And by emotion, I mean fires. Hosted in upstate New York, Woodstock 99 was meant to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Woodstock. With two main stages, several secondary stages, and a nighttime rave hangar, there was no shortage of places to contract tinnitus. Before the event even began, things were off to a rocky start. The peace and love movement was now nothing more than a slogan to be stamped onto tees and sold for a profit. And this corporate mindset extended to the festival itself. The cheap early bird tickets were still $150 or around $260 today, which was expensive at the time. Of course, the absolutely stacked lineup would make it all worth it, featuring the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Metallica, DMX, Limp Bizkit, Korn, Alanis Morissette, Kid Rock, and Creed, just to name a few. The festival kicks off, and it is hot, but that's still preferable to rain, right? Just grab some shade and an overpriced beer and cool off in style. That was, if not for Woodstock 94. Woodstock 94, the previous Woodstock festival, was infamously referred to as Mudstock, after a storm slicked the grounds with mud, which festival goers would then pelt at the acts. To counter this, Woodstock 99 was hosted on an old airbase to minimize grassy areas and therefore mud. Aside from the irony of a peace and love festival taking place on a former military site, trees and plains have a bitter rival dating back centuries, which meant finding shade was also impossible. While Woodstock 94 had too much water, Woodstock 99 didn't have enough. While bottled water was already $4 on the first day, the vendors showed a lot of peace and love by jacking the prices up to $12 a bottle after realizing how sparse water was. There were free water fountains available, but they were so sparse that lines lasted hours. Outraged at the poor amenities available, some vigilantes broke the pipes, allowing water to flow freely for all. While this worked for a time, the water was now pooling and creating mud, the very thing the organisers wanted to avoid. On top of that, the soil was saturated with delicious chemicals and heavy metals from its time as a military installation, which was now leaching into the mud and turning into dum-dum soup. Adventurous water drinkers could always leave the festival grounds and go to the nearby town of Rome, New York. Unfortunately, the idea was hardly original, and the small town stores quickly ran dry. Even if you were one of the lucky ones to nab some bottles, security would force you to throw out any food or drink at the gates, unless you bribed them, of course. You see, instead of hiring the original 500 police officers they had planned, organisers hired mercenaries with scrupulous morals, whose only allegiance is to the highest bidder, as in temp job workers. While Lang tried to put a hippie spin on it by saying it was to avoid the influences of the police state or the government, this was just a flimsy cover so that they could cheap out on security and save more money. The security staff, who could have been spending their time trying to stop 9/11 if they knew it was going to happen, were unarmed, untrained, and uninterested in doing their jobs. Instead, they'd steal, confiscate alcohol and then drink it themselves, and even sell their security shirts to attendees in case you wanted to Agent 47 your way backstage to hang out with Flea. Some security allegedly demanded sexual favors from female attendees, which is an unfortunate recurring theme of the festival. Multiple bands had to call out gropings that they could see from the stage, and at least 5 cases of sexual assault were reported, although the real number would obviously be much higher. Even Woodstock's official website joined in, posting photos of topless women without their consent, along with some real peace and love type captions like "nice pair" and "show us your tits," forgetting that they in fact were already doing that. Sheryl Crow also alleged that somebody threw feces at her while she performed My Favourite Mistake, fittingly. Of course, the feces flinger might have thought it was just mud, as the toilets had begun to overflow from the 250,000 guests, which then mixed with the radioactive mud pits created by the broken water fountains. Believing the mud was crafted from regular dirt and not shit water, some people began slipping and sliding in the brown bog to cool down, resulting in a number of cases of trench foot and trench mouth. This also contaminated the drinking water with E. coli, and to top it all off, the sanitation workers who were contracted to run the festival didn't show up, possibly as a joke. These less than ideal circumstances, along with a mixture of heat stroke, dehydration, and illicit substances, resulted in a tense crowd. The apathetic security did little to help the situation, and the bands weren't much better, riling up the crowd intentionally or otherwise. Famed magnet researchers the Insane Clown Posse apologised to the audience for having to hear them play by taping $100 bills to several beach balls and kicking them out to the crowd, which people began fighting over. The Offspring lined up 5 dummies with the faces of each member of the Backstreet Boys, and frontman Dexter Holland started whacking them with a baseball bat. When he wasn't singing about sleeping with underage girls, Kid Rock told people to throw plastic water bottles at the stage, perhaps in protest of the expensive water. Rumours began to circulate of a surprise performance after the final act of the night, the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Prince, the Rolling Stones, even Michael Jackson were all names floated around the delirious crowd. Everyone would just have to survive the concert to find out. At the peak of an already violent, mosh-inducing Limp Bizkit set, human soul patch Fred Durst addressed the crowd. Rightio, time to reach deep down inside, take all that negative energy and let that shit out of your fucking system. Well, it's time to take all that negative energy, put it the fuck out. Okay? The crowd immediately started destroying small buildings near the stage and punching each other. When the Red Hot Chili Peppers performed a cover of Fyre, the Red Hot with Rage audience didn't hear it as a tribute to Jimi Hendrix's performance at the original Woodstock. They heard it as a battle cry. Bonfires began to spring up in the crowd, lit with candles handed out as part of a candlelit vigil for victims of the Columbine massacre, as they would have wanted. Vehicles were flipped and set ablaze, and the crowd finally got revenge for the overpriced water by destroying booths and stalls and using them for kindling. An audio tower caught fire at the end of the set, and even the fire department was too scared of the crowd to do anything about it. It eventually collapsed into a field. The secret final act had yet to play. Perhaps a legendary performance by a legendary artist would be enough to calm the crowd and get them to disperse in an orderly fashion. Instead of Michael Jackson or Prince, the crowd was treated to a video of Jimi Hendrix from 1969 and a laser show. After days of disrespect from the security, the vendors, the organisers, and the sun itself, this tipped everyone over the edge. The ironically named Peace Wall, a security wall that people were invited to paint peace and love messages on to make it more palatable, was destroyed and added to the bonfires. ATM machines and trailers were tipped over, attacked, and looted of all valuables, with an estimated $22,000 being stolen from automated teller machines. Festival staff barricaded themselves inside a control tower as the audience turned against the MTV staff recording the event, pelting them with bottles, rocks, and batteries. Executives from MTV issued a statement to staff at the event, saying that the network's parent firm Viacom could no longer guarantee their safety. Good luck! Around 44 people were arrested, with 253 treated for injuries at local hospitals. Tragically, 3 people also died, one from heat stroke, one from a cocktail of obesity and hypothermia, and the final one from having a brief romantic fling with a speeding car while walking home from the concert. 10 state troopers and 2 state police supervisors were reportedly demoted or suspended for their behaviour at the festival. Numerous lawsuits were filed, and accounting for these and other various fines, the city of Rome only profited $200,000 from the entire event. Despite all of this, a website unaffiliated with the organisers is currently promoting a petition to try doing this thing one more time. While some of these events fail due to poor planning, others Sorry, I just need to step out for a bit. I know I should quit. I've tried going cold turkey, but I'm more of a ham guy. But then I realized, instead of trying to give up your bad habit entirely, why not just take the bad out of it? With Fume. Thanks to today's sponsor, Fume. I've been rocking the old Fume 5000 here. That's not what it's called. Don't search that. But this is a beautiful little device that's meant to help you break your bad habits. So it's a little suckable. This thing, it just tastes good. You feel like you're having a nice tasty treat. No calories, no death, no salt, nothing that'll kill you. I'm so sweaty. It's really hot in here. No electronics, no vapors or anything. Just nice air that you breathe through a tasty little scented stick. It's very fun to fiddle with. If you're anything like me, you're a big fiddler. But this is very fun to fiddle with. A lot of cool magnetic bits. It sounds like this. That's good air. Stopping is something we all put off because it's hard, but switching to Fume is easy, enjoyable, and even fun. Head to tryfume.com/minikudos right now, or scan the QR code and use my code minikudos. From now until December 1st, you can get an amazing 20% off site-wide. And even after that, you can still use my code to get 10% off. You can even upgrade your journey pack to the Solano to enjoy the premium walnut barrel and onyx black coated mouthpiece with a smoother finish and still get the discount. Thanks again to Fume for sponsoring this video. While some of these events failed due to poor planning, others seem cursed by God and Jesus himself. The Hudson Project was a music festival organised in 2014 by MCP Presents. This company has a ton of experience under their belt, hosting more than 1,000 events and almost 1 million tickets collectively sold. One of Woodstock's original organisers, Michael Lang, was also brought on to run the event. So you'd think between the two of them, they'd be able to organise a festival and be prepared for anything to go wrong. The lineup was announced on April 1st, 2014, but it was no joke, with artists like Kendrick Lamar, Bass Nectar, Modest Mouse, and the Flaming Lips set to play. The project would include gourmet food and craft beverages, camping, art installations, workshops, and even a screening of the Brazil World Cup final. And people were hyped. The event kicks off and it's a blast. There were around 20,000 attendees, and when reviews of the event aren't talking about the disaster it turned into, they're raving about how good the performances were. There were some minor hiccups, from 51 people being arrested on drug charges to varying levels of security that saw some people getting a wayward glance while others would get a rectal pap smear test in order to check for outside beverages. Still, none of this was too out of the ordinary for a festival, and even when some light rain rolled in on the Saturday night, festival goers were having too good of a time to care and simply danced through the rain. Unfortunately for the Hudson Project, there is a point where the rain to MDMA ratio skews a bit too heavily in the storm's favour, and you end up with Sunday, July 13th. At 4:45 p.m, organisers told attendees to evacuate the festival grounds on recommendation from the National Weather Service. A massive storm was set to strike the festival at 5:15 p.m, giving everyone only half an hour to react to the organisers' warning. Festival goers were told to seek shelter in your vehicles during the storm and to keep away from trees and any structures and follow directions from event staff and police. A simple enough request, but given how little time there was between the warning and the storm hitting, a lot of people just simply couldn't make it to their cars in time. Despite not being on the bill, rock band Puddle of Mud made a surprise appearance just as people were attempting to evacuate. People without cars were told to make a friend and find space in nearby vehicles. And with shuttles to train stations not leaving until 2:30 a.m, many people were simply stranded. The final performances, including headliner Bass Nectar, were cancelled due to another storm sweeping in. The Hudson Project quickly became the Mudson Project, as the sticky brown substance engulfed the festival grounds. At least there were probably no feces in it this time. I mentioned before that Woodstock 94 also earned the name Mudstock 94 after its similarly saturated sludge fest. and that Woodstock organiser Michael Lang had also helped organise the Hudson Project. Now is probably the time to note that the Hudson Project took place on the exact same grounds as Woodstock 94, which makes me think this is less of a freak weather accident and more the gods punishing Lang for his hubris. Still, you can hardly blame the organisers for bad weather, but they nevertheless fell short in their response to the festival turning into R. Kelly's mattress. The staff must have done a much better job of evacuating than the attendees did, as they were nowhere to be found. The few staff that could be pinned down and tickled were poorly trained, with some telling attendees to follow non-existent signs to find parking. Some people were reportedly trapped at the campsite or in their cars as late as July 15th, 2 days after they were told to evacuate. An obscenely long apology post was made on July 18th, addressing the poor behaviour from staff and, the whole not being able to leave thing. Still, there was an overall theme of things being out of their control thanks to the weather, and a location that hadn't hosted an event like this in 20 years. Despite organisers stating that they can't wait to do it all again next year, they did not, in fact, do it all again next year. Much like a tale of overpromising, underselling, a chronic scam artist, and Ja Rule, which is French for The Rule. Fyre Festival was meant to be a luxury music festival hosted in the Bahamas. Set over 2 transformative weekends, the boutique band viewing claimed that the actual experience exceeds all expectations.
The actual experience exceeds all expectations.
This wanky marketing talk was proudly displayed in the festival's announcement video from January 13th, 2017, promising gourmet food, luxury accommodations, and jaw-chewingly good performances. This immersive music festival was on a quest to push beyond those boundaries. What those boundaries are never specified, so I'm going to guess some kind of legal boundaries. The video itself is a supercut of models contributing to society on some beautiful remote beaches, along with cocktails, yachts, and feeding island pigs. Look, that could be you, if the pig island was where Fyre was being held. Which it's not. Speaking of where it's not, the announcement video claims that Fyre would be held on Norman's Cay, an island once owned by Pablo Escobar. Except it was actually owned by another Medellin cartel member, Carlos Lerdo. On top of that, the promotion video wasn't even shot there, but on Saddleback Cay, another island in the Bahamas which isn't even close to Norman's Cay. Wherever this theoretical festival would theoretically occur, the theoretical masterminds behind Fyre made some big promises. Musicians such as Blink-182, Migos, and Small Yachty headlined the festival, but jiggling to music wouldn't be the only thing to do at Fyre. Adventure packages sold the fantasy of being a modern James Bond. If James Bond's dad was a chairman at Raytheon, and instead of being a spy, he was a wanker who went cave diving. Guests would be housed in modern, eco-friendly geodesic domes, unless you had your own personal yacht, of course. These domes were given wanky names like The Nest or The Den, and were sold with pencil renditions that don't show any actual domes. While the festival was billed as this expensive luxury event for trust fund kids to waste daddy's money on, the tickets were actually kind of cheap. Sure, $12,000 for The Den sounds ridiculous until you realize that it includes 4 tickets, which each included flights, food, and admission to the festival itself. $3,000 per person for a boutique, all expenses paid holiday in the Bahamas isn't bad as far as holidays go, meaning either the promoter would lose huge amounts of money fulfilling these promises, or they would cheap out on the festival in order to turn a profit. I'm sure you can guess which one happened. While marketing talk and videos of beautiful bikini babes, who you had no chance with in the first place, were enough to sell some people, others were more skeptical. The Twitter account @FyreFraud, run by venture capitalist Calvin Wells, starts sharing evidence that the festival was a scam and was going to be a total clusterfuck. The Wall Street Journal also ran an article which claimed that artists hadn't been paid, VIP guests didn't have their travel itineraries, and that the festival was wooing the wealthy just to make ends meet. But why would they think this? Surely a festival this ambitious would be run by someone who knows what they're doing, right? Enter Billy McFarland. His titles on Wikipedia include American con artist and convicted felon, which I suppose are only marginally worse than mine. Billiam invented Magnesis back in 2013, which was essentially the American Express black card targeted at guys who would get really into NFTs in about 7 years. He also invented the Fyre app, which is like Tinder if they matched musicians with clients instead of matching me with girls who leave me on red. Billy needed a way to promote this new app, and he had just the thing in mind: Fyre Festival. To help make this a reality, he teamed up with rapper Jeffrey Atkins, better known as Ja Rule. The two had previously bonded over a mutual interest in technology, the ocean, and rap music. This festival could have been a great promo opportunity, if not for April 27th, the day people were supposed to arrive for the first of two transformative weekends. The custom VIP configured Boeing 737s turned out to just be regular Boeing 737s with custom VIP chips on every seat. The first attendees to rock up were corralled into an impromptu beach party at a beachside restaurant, where they were doused with alcohol and kept waiting for around 6 hours while the festival site was frantically thrown together. Later arrivals were brought directly to the grounds by a custom VIP configured school bus. These were the lucky ones who actually made it to the island, as many other wannabe attendees flooded Reddit, Twitter, and Instagram to complain that their flight had been delayed, rescheduled, or cancelled.
We have been advised by Fyre, the tour operator of your flight, that they can no longer accept any further guests in Exuma.
These websites weren't the only thing to be flooded, as heavy rainfall had hit the festival grounds early in the morning. This was hardly the gorgeous weather shining down on bebosomed babes that the trailer advertised, and while we can hardly blame Billy for the weather, I'm going to anyway. The eco-friendly geodesic domes turned out to be eco-friendly geodesic disaster relief tents that, like a half-finished house in The Sims, only had dirt for floors. Mattresses were in limited supply and either came wrapped in custom VIP configured plastic or freshly soaked by the rainfall that morning. Even with only 500 attendees, there weren't enough tents to go around, so people scrambled to claim any spot they could. Billy himself allegedly encouraged guests to run and grab any tent they could find. The gourmet food from celebrity chefs turned out to be the world's saddest cheese sandwich, and I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that they weren't able to accommodate any dietary requirements either. Their original caterer, the high-end Star Catering Group, had withdrawn from the festival earlier that month. They pulled out because Fyre Festival organisers had rejected their six-figure cost, claiming that they could find other caterers for cheaper. I guess they weren't lying. Meanwhile, the band managers who deal with these sorts of festivals for a living could tell that Fyre was fishier than mermaid pussy, and none of the big names actually showed up. Instead, a group of local musicians took to the stage around nightfall and played for a few hours, the only acts to perform at the event. Now, astute viewers may raise an eyebrow at the term local musicians. After all, isn't this meant to take place on some remote island previously owned by the Medellin cartel? Well, it was, except that the owners of the island leased it to Billy on the strict condition that they not mention Pablo Escobar or the Medellin cartel anywhere in their promotional materials. They kicked him out soon after the first promotional video dropped. The festival itself instead took place on Great Exuma, the largest island in the Bahamas. While still a beautiful location, it's hardly the private getaway that was promised. On top of that, the lockers had no locks, meaning they were just hers. There was no running water, but thankfully there were crates of miscellaneous alcohol laying around in the sand for you to quench your thirst. There was a distinct lack of medical staff, or really any staff in general, and perhaps most tragically, as it had been promoted as a cashless event, many people found themselves without money to pay for a taxi or other expenses, essentially depriving rich kids of their one superpower. In the early hours of the 28th, the day after people arrived, the festival was officially cancelled. The first flight back to Miami boarded at 1:30 a.m, but was delayed for hours due to issues with the flight's manifest. It was cancelled after sunrise, and passengers were now locked in the Exuma Airport terminal with no access to food, water, air conditioning, or cocaine. A passenger recalled that at least one person passed out from the heat and had to be hospitalised. The Fyre Festival website put out a statement, shifting the blame to, I don't know, whoever you feel like. Jeffrey Rule put out the classic Notes app statement, which says in all caps that it was not a scam, okay, and not his fault. He also put out a joint statement with Billy that promised refunds as well as VIP passes for the next Fyre Festival. With the massive stink this kicked up, even a professional scam artist like Billy couldn't make it out of this one clean. A $100 million lawsuit was filed against him and Senor Rule just days after the festival was cancelled, and a month after that, he was arrested and charged with wire fraud and making false statements to a federal law enforcement agency. The festival wasn't the only thing he cheaped out on, as he failed to pay his previous legal team and had to be represented by a public defender at his bail hearing. Billy was sentenced to 6 years in prison for wire fraud and another 6 years for a different scam that he ran while out on bail. Ja Rule, Kendall Jenner, and all the other celebrities who promoted Fyre without disclosing they were paid all got off relatively scot-free. On April 10th of 2023, Billy announced that Fyre 2 was happening. If you believe Billy, who I'll remind you has a history of impeccable honesty, pre-sale tickets sold out within a day, and that they received applications for $3,395,000 worth of tickets. Whatever that means. This one will not take place in the Bahamas, however, as both Billy and Ja Rule have been banned there for life. On the 1986 summer solstice, Larry Harvey and Jerry James built a big wooden bloke and dragged it to Baker Beach, San Francisco. After taking turns making out with it, they set the effigy on fire so that it couldn't tell a soul. But ironically, this only had the opposite effect. This man who was burning ended up attracting quite a crowd, and it inspired the two to maybe do it again. Although, if they knew about Burning Man 2023, perhaps it would have given them some pause. Over time, the igniting of the person evolved into a week-long gathering devoid of headliners or scheduled performances. Participants instead design and build all the art, activities, and events, and everything from haircuts to gobbies operate on a barter system. The only things you can buy with money at Burning Man are ice and coffee from the center camp and kisses from Dylan, the wandering sex pest. The concept itself is actually pretty cool, but as you'd expect, it attracts a lot of billionaire yoga instructor types and Silicon Valley entrepreneurs who want to open their third eye so they can invent Uber for cats or something. The 35th annual Burning Man had the theme Animalia, celebrating the animal world and our place in it. It would be held in Black Rock City, a temporary city erected in Nevada's Black Rock Desert, where it's taken place since 1991. The Nevada desert is a hostile environment, reaching temperatures of over 48 degrees Celsius during the day, well below 0 degrees Celsius at night, and with 100km/h winds whipping up dust for hours. You have to bring your own food, water, shelter, bicycle, and then make sure you bring everything with you when you leave. Unless you don't want to, or you think it would be funny. They've been dealing with these factors for over 30 years though, so nothing out of the ordinary was expected in 2023. Things got off to a rocky start on the 21st of August during Build Week. As the name implies, this is where people come to start setting up art installations for the 30-something yuppies to stare at while tripping on acid. Entry for Build Week was delayed after an unseasonal storm saturated the ground, turning it into beautiful brown mud. This only held up operations for 2 days though, so it was hardly a big hurdle. That was until the 1st of September. With Burning Man now properly underway, the long tail of Tropical Storm Hillary Clinton tail-whipped the Black Rock Desert with 15 centimeters of rain in 24 hours. For reference, that's the same amount of rain that they'd typically receive in 2 to 3 months. Tragically, no amount of men could be burnt that would dry out the now destitute festival grounds, as people online began referring to it as Raining Man or Drowning Man, attendees struggled with the thick mud that could barely be walked through. Organisers closed the only gate into Black Rock City and banned anyone except for emergency services and drug dealers from coming in and out of the area. Not only does this mean the 70,000 plus attendees are trapped there with limited supplies, but there was no way to empty and clean the now overflowing portable toilets. Festival goers were warned to take shelter and conserve food, water, and ayahuasca. Joe Biden was briefed on the situation and reportedly drone striked a hospital in the Middle East in response. Diplo, who just days before was DJing from a hot air balloon, had to walk through 8 kilometers of mud and scorpions with Chris Rock to escape. A tweet with a screenshot from the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's Twitter account declared that there'd been an Ebola outbreak at the festival, which wasn't true, but was convincing enough that it freaked people out. Tragically, one attendee did pass away, but from a drug overdose, and not from any Ebola or mud-themed reasons. Of course, the saddest part of Burning Man 2023 wasn't the loss of life, but that the giant man was still too wet to burn. 2 days after the storm, residents of Black Rock City were still trapped in a prison of their own creation. But if there was any festival designed to withstand this sort of battering, it would be Burning Person. With festival goers bringing all their own supplies, as well as a strong emphasis on self-reliance and community, the gang all banded together to weather the storm, or rather the mud. The conflict instead came from the fact that everyone there didn't want to just survive, they wanted to party. Still, after having every orifice and piece of luggage saturated with mud for days, most people were keen to just cut their losses and get out of there. On the 4th of September, the main road was finally open to the public. Despite urging people to delay their departure to help traffic flow, within 2 hours there was already a massive lineup of cars, with a wait time of around 5 hours. Only now, once everyone was on the way out, were they finally able to burn the man. Besides the guy who fucking died, the aftermath was actually pretty chill. The Burning Man guests, known as burners, or in this case burn victims, really did come together, literally in some cases, in order to keep each other alive. The moop was much worse than in previous years, which I originally thought was a portmanteau of mud and poop, but actually stands for matter out of place. So rubbish. You can just call it rubbish, it's fine. But in the words of the official Burning Man website, there's something special about sharing a weather event and living to tell the tale. It's a feature, not a bug. Chocolate milk is pretty much mud as well, right? Check out this video about the chocolate milk that sent New Zealand crazy. And hey, don't forget to check out Fume as well if you're trying to break some of your bad habits.